So with the unfolding tariff war, you have different countries, the leaders of different countries coming to the U.S. to negotiate a trade deal. Independently coming, setting up, a different bilateral relationship directly with the U.S. One of those countries was Italy. The new leader of Italy, Giorgia Meloni. Meloni? I'm sure there's a different way to pronounce it in Italian, but that's the way I'll say it. She was over here, great photo op for her. Apparently, they're working out a good trade deal between Italy and the U.S. Josh, let me ask you. Even if a solid trade deal is established between Italy and the U.S., a great deal, maybe even favors Italy. They get a better deal than the U.S. Do you think that 50 years from now, they'll be better off or worse off than they are today?
The issue Italy has is they are actually very close to the Chinese Communist Party as well. Like of even European countries, they're among the closest to the CCP. To the extent that they even had policing deals where Chinese police could even patrol in Rome. It was really bad.
And they have Chinese factories there.
They have a lot of Chinese factories.
And they got COVID first.
They got COVID first, that's
Probably
right.
there's a relation there.
So the issue with Italy is, one, they've had a lot of problems with Chinese factories operating there because they believe they're undermining the quality of the Italian brand. They feel that a lot of they feel that their national identity and the seal of quality that made in Italy used to represent has been undermined by the CCP. They're also dealing with the fact the CCP is just doing knockoffs of all their goods, like the viral TikTok videos where it's essentially bootleggers.
Correct. Not even manufactured. Goods not manufactured in China are being sold by Chinese factories.
And so, you got to think of what Italy's main exports are, right? It's a lot of food products, it's wine and stuff like that. And so they will, and tourism is huge for them, especially in Europe. And so for them, they would be better off working with the USA by far, I would say.
So didn't expect that answer, to be honest with you. What I was getting at is that the birth rate in Italy is 0.09. The fertility rate is 0.9, meaning for every couple, there's 0.9 kids being made. So what that means is that in 50 years, they will have 50% of the current population.
Well, many Italians have left. So the way it's structured, they've left a lot of their traditional villages. You can buy up some of these homes for $1.
Right.
You just got to put a lot of money to fix them. Beautiful, villas.
Yeah. If you fix it up and start a business, they'll give it to you.
But the problem is you have no customers. A lot of these villages are composed primarily of the elderly. And a lot of people have been pushed to major cities in Italy like Rome, and others have just left for other parts of the European Union.
Right. So you have that. Among the people who are left, then the birth rate is 0.09. So just setting aside the CCP issue, just from a pure demographic perspective, I mean, if you have half the amount of people left 50 years from now, plus it's an aging population because people aren't having kids. So Italy is a bad example in Europe, but they're not the worst. South Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the entire world. And when I was scrolling on social media, I actually came across a short video of, actually it was a friend of the show, breaking down exactly what their birth rate looks like over the course of time, 4 generations. Let's take a look at that video.
I know it's going to be good for
Koreans are actually going extinct. You see, the latest birth rate data just came out. It shows that the Korean fertility rate has completely fallen off a cliff. The average Korean woman is only having 0.72 kids. This means that for every 100 Koreans today, they will leave behind only 4 great-grandkids. Or put another way, the Korean population will be reduced by 96% within the next 3 generations. If that sounds too crazy to be true, here's the math. You take 100 Koreans today, 50 men and 50 women, and they make 50 couples. Based on the fertility rate, those 50 couples will only have 36 kids. Those 36 kids form 18 couples and have 12 kids. Then those 12 kids will form 6 couples and have just 4 kids. This means that if nothing changes, Korea will experience a staggering 96% population drop within the next 3 generations.
That is rough. Cindy, you had a question?
I do have a question. Maybe not for Korea, but back to your stats for Italy. Were those numbers that you gave just for ethnic Italians or anyone living there? Because they have a very significant migrant population who I believe the birth rate is going to be a whole lot higher than that. So if it's averaged out, then the ethnic Italians really aren't having kids, or that's not factored into that number. Do you know?
To be honest, I don't know, but I do know that when that birth rate data came out for South Korea, the South Korea, the equivalent of our Interior Department came out and he said that the answer to their problem is open border immigration. So it seems to be a common answer to that problem.
And one of the issues that has facilitated this birth rate is also the work culture in South Korea. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it's much different than Italy. There are a lot of positions you actually take a test to get into a career at the end of your schooling to work for a company like Samsung or any other major Korean company. And some people sleep in the office, they have literal beds. They're being worked to death. They have no time to reproduce.
Yeah.
Well, didn't Japan just change to like a 4-day work week to try and solve that?
I think they did.
They're making changes. A lot of it is based around work culture and labor.
They did, but Japan is, from my understanding, I mean, I'm not a Japanese expert or anything, but I do think that it's one of those like suggestion type of things, because I don't think you're going to stop a Japanese company salaryman from like working 6 days a week until he's to the bone.
The wild card's going to be if the new pope comes in and says birth control's banned again. Because
birth control is still banned.
That was one of the well, I thought they made it so that they actually they can use it now, from what I understand, under Pope Francis. That was a recent change, wasn't it?
No. There's always been natural family planning, which is a little different than that, but using contraceptives is still illicit by the Catholic Church.
Don't know how much a change. Well, I guess in Italy that would be a big deal. I was going to think in
I mean,
South
again,
Korea.
it's not. They're not controlling anything. Like, people are still using contraceptives in Italy.
Right. So one thing I wanted to ask Josh specifically about this is that when you talk about the birth rate, naturally you talk a lot about the economics, right? Because it's just expensive to have kids. That's what a lot of people are thinking about. Like, oh, can I afford to have kids? Everything's so expensive. Daycare is expensive. Even like in America, having a kid is expensive. Like the actual, just the process of going to the hospital. But I was watching a phenomenal speech. It was given at the Natalist Con, the Natalist Convention, right, in Texas, talking about like this problem, the decreased birth rate. Yeah. And the speaker, he brought up this interesting point, how feminism, as what they did was they empowered women to go into the workforce, but at the same time, they sort of diminished the role of motherhood from an espoused role in society, like this really like up on a totem, like, wow, this is the mother, this is an important role in society, very prestigious role, to something like lower, like it's not that important, like, oh, you're like a stay-at-home mom, it's like you don't have a career. They sort of like demonize that. So his argument was that the economics plays a role, but it's sort of the emotional aspect to it, the societal sort of framework has shifted such that motherhood is not seen as a viable, good, high-status option for women.
Is that feminism, or is that globalists controlling major industries who are trying to use feminism to have perpetual workers?
Well, his argument was that the feminism... His argument was that it's always been strange that the communists sort of like embraced feminism, because in theory, feminism was the greatest gift to capitalists. It increased the workforce by 50% and therefore drove the wages down, right?
That always makes me laugh. Like, you think Industrial Revolution, you're literally a slave in a factory, and you have all these like women activist groups. They're like, yeah, we're super liberated now, working in like, a slave labor factory setting. Like, how is that a better life? Right. But I do think that this is one of the issues of the birth rate, though, because what you have a lot is, what is the course of life for most people? You go to school, you go to college, maybe you graduate and you're like, I don't know, 24 or 22 maybe, depending on how long you go for, of course. A lot of women, they get out, they want to do their career, they're 26 by then, 28.
They have a big student debt.
Big student debt, and I mean, and on one side you could, they probably date. The guy doesn't want to commit typically, or it doesn't work out. By that time, they're 32 or something like that. A few relationships under their belt,
and they've been influenced by hookup culture. So statistically, they're probably not going to have a marriage.
There's also a stat.
So bleak sounding.
This is modern reality.
And the thing is, the hard reality is, biologically, women have a time. They have a clicking, timer on them. They cannot have babies forever. That's just the reality.
There's also a stat that if you haven't had a baby by the time you're 30, then your chance of having a baby at all is massively diminished. And part of it is, you're on this career trajectory if you haven't found, the mate yet that you want to have a child with, but also you're less fertile. And actually actual fertility is also a problem. What was the stat that just came out? The testosterone.
Oh, it's through the floor.
Exactly.
That's the other side too. Is a lot. You even have a lot of very traditional women, and they just can't find guys who want to commit.
And if they get older, you can also introduce a lot of things like there's a higher incidence of autism if you wait longer.
Well,
you have birth defects. Other things come up.
I think the problem is people's understandings of relationships have changed in general. And people don't prioritize that as like the foundation of life anymore. I think they want to pursue, outside things a lot more than just starting a family and building a life like that.
Tiffany, any final thoughts?
Oh, just to your earlier question, you see part of that play out in China because they had the one-child policy. And because, so in some cases, there were a lot more just the only child was a girl if they kept that one, right? And so you saw a change in terms of those women who grew up and they're the only child. So they see themselves as equals to the men. They're like, well, I have to support my family. Like, I'm the one that's supposed to go out and make the living and all those. So you had that aspect as well inside of China. And then, of course, they had a huge demographic disaster. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then they didn't allow abortions anymore. They flipped it. They're like, wait, no, we can't have this aging population and, no one trying. And then you see that now as well, where it's going so poorly that their version of TikTok doing is really trying to push, these like have a family type videos. But the population is like, there's no jobs for us. We're not doing this. We graduate and we can't do anything. So there's a whole resistance in that aspect as well.
Because of finances. And now maybe the Trump administration will usher in a little bonus for people who choose to get...
the parent $5,000 birth bonus.
So you have a kid, you get paid $5K.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, just FYI, you do already get paid $2K.
That's only with your tax
credit.
You don't really get paid.
What's a tax credit, though?
Yeah.
I could see Elon Musk.
Right.
It's retroactive if you can cash in on some of those.
He's like,
okay.
Yeah,
what I will just mention
is
is that barring any unforeseen changes, like this is a big shift that's about to happen, let's say 30, 50 years from now, in our lifetime, that certain countries will like halve in population. Some countries, obviously Japan and South Korea are kind of like outliers out there, but like they're literally gonna half in population, and the population that's left will be significantly older. So I don't know, not investment advice, but it might be good to invest in like nursing home, something along that line. It's a joke, but it's also not a joke.
All right, I know exactly what you're thinking. That was a great clip you just watched. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to follow and also check out either these videos or maybe they're on this side. I don't know which side they're on, but we set it up. So these are the videos that YouTube is suggesting to you as the best ones that you'll probably like the most. So check them out, this side, and until next time.